Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Dynamics 365 Tech Talk. Today's topic is preparing for your year-end close with Dynamics 365 Finance. My name is Peggy, and I'll be your moderator today. We're broadcasting this session through Teams live events, and the audio can be heard through your device speakers. This session is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation. When you join this event, your name, email address, and/or phone number may be viewable by other session participants in the attendee list. By joining, you're agreeing to this experience. The recording will be available on the Tech Talks Community Dynamics page within the coming weeks. If you have questions for the presenters or need support, please use the Q&A panel located on the right side of your screen. Our presenters will be responding to your questions throughout the event and in the live Q&A segment near the end. Thank you for your patience during these announcements. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Annette Bruer. Annette, over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Peggy. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. This is part one of a series called Optimize Year-End Close. Part two, which will be presented next week, will cover the running of the year-end close processing. So today we'll focus on what has changed since last year's year-end close. And our goal today is to make you aware of the new functionality in hopes that it will help you to better plan for this year's year-end close process and help you determine which features that you'd like to engage with. So just as a quick refresher, let's take a look at the very high-level process flow. And we're going to focus on the left-hand side on the asterisk areas, including the ledger settlement and consolidation changes, as well as in the subledger and accounts payable, we'll take a look at the 1099 changes. And again, the actual year-end close process on the right will be covered in next week's Tech Talk. As a reminder, to aid in your period end activities, consider taking advantage of the financial period close workspace that's available in General Ledger today. This workspace allows you to track your closing processes across companies or legal entities, across areas as depicted in the picture where we have the subledger showing in the middle portion of your screen. And as you can also track the status by person or the people that you've assigned tasks to, and that helps you to load balance better. The process uses templates that define all the tasks that are part of the closing processes. And I like to think of it as a checklist or a to-do list to help you aid in your activities at year end. So let's get started with the things that have changed since the 2020 calendar year-end close timeframe. Ledger settlements is an area that has had several changes, including a new feature that we released in release 10.0.25. The feature is called Awareness Between Ledger Settlements and Year-End Close. We've also introduced automation into our ledger settlements process. And in 10.0.31, we've also introduced a new inquiry feature for ledger settlements. We'll also cover changes to the consolidation process. And for those of you that report 1099 values to the IRS in the United States, we'll overview those changes. So let's go ahead and get started with the ledger settlement changes. And we'll kind of overview the process first. This process is the process of matching debits and credits in General Ledger for the purpose of identifying any outliers, so those things that don't naturally match up. A common example that we see in this area would be, for instance, a clearing account, like an accrued purchases account, perhaps, where there's usually a matching debit and credit. There's two issues that have been experienced in previous year-end close processes with respect to ledger settlements. Now remember, when you do a year-end close, of course, we summarize the transactions from a GL perspective. And the issue in previous years was that we bring open balances forward, even those, including those that were ledger settled already. So this raises a problem, as you can see at the top of the form, with respect to the foreign currency revaluation. Previously, our foreign currency revaluation included balances in the new year that were actually settled against transactions settled in the previously closed year, I should say. And of course, that's problematic because that'll cause exchange rate gains or losses to be unnecessarily calculated through this foreign currency revaluation. Our second issue on the lower portion of the screen is the lack of ability to settle new transactions that happened in the current fiscal year to a detailed transaction from the past year. So as part of the year-end close, again, all that data has been summarized. So let's just take an example. Let's say we have 2 invoices. Each one is for $100 US. You run a year-end close, and it's summarized to be a $200 beginning balance. So now let's assume a customer pays for the invoice in the next fiscal year. The issue is that that $100 payment can't be settled to the $200 summarized value because we don't allow partial ledger settlement. So to solve these problems, we've introduced a new feature in 10.0.25 called Awareness Between Ledger Settlement and Year-End Close. Now, when you enable the feature, there's 2 primary changes. And the changes really help to address those 2 pain points and create that tighter dependency between ledger settlement and the year-end close. So first, our approach is to not bring forward the ledger settled transactions anymore when running the year-end close. So this will ensure that only those unsettled beginning balance transactions are eligible for foreign currency revaluation in the next year. Second, will allow you to bring the unsettled transactions forward as detailed opening balances instead of summarized balances. And in that process, we'll keep a copy. So we'll have a copy of each detailed unsettled transaction created as a beginning balance transaction in the new year. So you don't lose the detail, you still have it, we'll bring it forward. So think about our previously mentioned scenario where I said I had 2 invoices for $100 US. Now each of those can be brought forward. So we'll have 2 opening balance transactions, allowing you to then settle a $100 payment in the next fiscal year to one of the invoices. One of the things that I'll note is we do recommend settling all of your marked transactions before enabling the feature, because when the feature is enabled, the system will automatically unmark those marked transactions in all of your legal entities. So let's take a look at some of the changes that you need to be aware of before enabling the feature. So in terms of the ledger settlement process itself, because the beginning balance, whether you summarized it or you brought it over in detail, will now only contain the unsettled transactions, ledger settlement can no longer be done across different main accounts or across differing fiscal years. So no more cross fiscal year settlement or cross main account settlement. And the settlement or reversals of settlement cannot be done for transactions in a closed year. Now we can't allow this because that beginning balance transaction would then be incorrect. So the changes are enforced on the ledger settlement form itself as depicted in the lower area. You can see now we allow you to define that main account, and that helps us to no longer be bringing forward or to be allowing for the cross-account settlement. And then as well on the from and the to date that we have depicted there, you'll no longer be able to cross outside of the fiscal year to make sure that we're enforcing no cross-year settlements. So in terms of the year-end close impact, you'll see that same type of restriction that we just discussed with the ledger settlement form. When you run the year-end close, cross-year settlements can't exist for the year you're closing, and if they do, you'll get messaging and the process would fail. And again, during the year-end close, only those unsettled transactions will be included in that summarized beginning balance. And that, of course, is to address that foreign currency revaluation issue that we talked about. Another thing to note is we have this option in the last bullet that I wanted to get into a little bit more detail with you. The option is called Keep Detail During Year-End Close. And of course, what this does, if this parameter is enabled, then balance sheet accounts will create opening balance transactions for each unsettled transaction. So thinking back to our pain points we discussed, that helps us to maintain that detailed transaction to settle against in the new year because we're only bringing the unsettled balances forward. So to take let's just illustrate with an example because this can be a little bit tricky to understand. Here I have a really simple data set. I only have 2 transactions. One is valued at $1,000 US, and the second is valued at $2,000 US. If the parameter is enabled, then 2 opening transactions will be created, as you can see right in the middle of the form. And if the parameter is not enabled, then we still summarize just like we used to. So the two transactions are summarized into this single opening balance. You can see in the middle the information such as the ledger account, the amounts, the description, that'll all be copied into the new detailed transactions that are posted as opening balances. So to recap the feature, I realize that's a lot of information to digest. Fortunately, we have some very detailed, thorough documentation available to review on your own. Couple of things to remember is that we do recommend settling marked transactions prior to enablement, if you can. We'd also like to draw your attention to this second checkpoint. We have documentation to help you decide whether to enable the feature before running your year-end close or after completing the year-end close. We have links to 2 separate documents that will guide you step by step through the process. So I really encourage you to take a look at that information because I think it can be a really helpful tool for you to know whether to enable before or after if you're using ledger settlements. And finally, I included a link to the public documentation that we have on the feature. So that'll give you a more general overview of what it is. So next we have another feature, and this feature will automate the ledger settlement process. So if you think about the ledger settlement process today, it is manual. And we know we've talked to customers that have very large volumes of data that they have to parse through in order to match their matching debits and credits. You know, there could be thousands of entries that they're walking through at the end of each month. And the whole goal of the ledger settlement process, as we mentioned earlier, is to remove that noise. That is, we want the accountant to just focus their attention on those entries that don't reconcile. So the way that we're approaching this is through automation. So we're going to let the system do that tedious matching process so the accountant can just focus on the discrepancies and not that busy work. We've introduced the automation into our process automation framework, if you're familiar with that. And that will allow you to schedule the frequency of the automation and to define the match criteria that's important to you. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at this in the product. I'll go ahead and open the product, and you can see I am on the feature management workspace. To enable the feature, it's called Automate Ledger Settlement Process. I've already enabled it in this instance. And when I enable that, one of the things that I wanted to show you is in the general ledger parameters area. And we'll take a look at the ledger settlements form. Here you can see we have a new field called the it's called the settlement typical balance, excuse me. And what this does is it tells the system which side of the transaction to start with when it's determining matching debits and credits. So should it start on the debit side and look for matching credits, or should it start on the credit side and look for matching debits? That's the purpose of this. I do have some data already set up for my accrued purchases account. So let's take a look at what we have. I'll go to the ledger settlements form. And again, here you can see we have the date range. And because I can't cross account settle anymore, I'll select my accrued purchases account. We'll go ahead and I just have a handful of transactions here. I have a few that are able to be matched by the process. I have this 1,000 and the $50.80 transactions. One thing to note with the automation is that we require an exact match. So what does that mean? That means the debit and the credit have to match exactly. So it should match the 1,000 to the 1,000. But let's say if I had a $1,000 debit, it would not automatically match to something like 300 and 700 in this first release of the automation. The automation itself, as I had mentioned, uses the process automation framework. So let's go take a look at that and we'll set up an automation. It's under System Administration. You can also get to the form through the General Ledger setup, but we'll go through the System Administration. This is probably what you're familiar with in terms of the path. We'll create a new process automation. My type will be Ledger Settlement. And we'll go ahead and create that series. I'll give it a name, and let's just say accrued purchases. And here's where you define on this first page of the wizard, the occurrence pattern. So I could define daily, a certain day of the week. I could define monthly, weekly, however I'd like to do it. And you set the time that you want it to run. Let's just start this shortly after midnight today. And just for the purposes of this demo, let's just run a couple of instances for it. Clicking next on the next page of the wizard, here's where you define your match criteria. And one of the nice things about this feature, it's kind of a feature within a feature, is that you can define separate occurrences, for instance, for each of the accountants that you have working on your staff. So maybe you have one accountant, let's say accountant A focuses on accrued purchases, and they like to reconcile, let's say once a week. And you have accountant B maybe that deals with the receivable side of the business, and they want to reconcile just at the end of each month. You could set up 2 occurrences. Each accountant could have their own. So there's lots of flexibility there. The match criteria is in the lower portion of the form. The main account and posting layers are required fields for the matching. You can opt into also requiring the posting type and the financial dimensions. I'll go ahead and mark the financial dimensions, and you'll see there's a new control that will allow me to select dimensions. I'll go ahead and I'll select the business unit. And what this will mean is that not only the main account, but also the business unit needs to match between the debits and the credits for my examples. When I click Finish, what this is doing is it's creating all of the occurrences. You can see on the right-hand side of my form, I have some scheduled occurrences, one to run today, a little after midnight, so that should be starting soon. Tomorrow and the next day are also scheduled. If you need to disable an occurrence or edit, you can do so. Maybe you have one that's set to run on a holiday and you want to just disable that so that it doesn't run on the holiday. You could certainly do that from this form. So behind the scenes, what this is doing is it's silently listening. Do I have any work to do? It's looking to see at the time, and at that point, then it'll look and it'll scan and it will say, are there any transactions that fall between the first day of the fiscal year and the day that I'm running? So anything between, in my case, in my demo data, between January 1st and December 6th. It will look for those transactions, gather them up, and say, are there any matching debits and credits for these? Let's just refresh here and see if it has had time to run. It has already completed. So I'm going to take you back to the ledger settlements form just to show you another change. So as the accountant, maybe I run this overnight, I could go back into my ledger settlements area. And again, I'll pick my accrued purchases account that I'm responsible for. We'll go ahead and display transactions. Here you can see the list is a bit smaller. I'll switch my view to show just the settled. And here you can see that the matching debits and credits were indeed matched. The thing that I wanted to point out was it now tracks the automation rule that was used to settle it. So again, because I was accountant A and I had set up my accrued purchases as the name of my automation rule, I could easily come in here and sort by that, whereas accountant B could go ahead and sort their information according to that rule. The other thing that I wanted to show you was the new inquiry form, and this inquiry form is available in 10.0.31. And this is another handy tool. Let's just go ahead and you can give it a date range again or use the date intervals. I've focused on my accrued purchases account. Here I can show the transactions, and it's similar to the actual ledger settlements form, except you're not doing any marking here. You're not actually settling. You're just viewing what has happened. You can see things like the transaction age. I'll hover over this field. If this had come over as an opening balance, we do keep some of that detail from the transaction in the previous year. So you could see the original date information, for example, and you could see the settlement ID here. So another handy little tool that's been added to 10.0.31. All right, let's continue on here. Let me just get back into presentation mode. And we'll move to the next topic. I'll let this refresh. Hopefully I'm not losing a connection here. Let me go back. That didn't seem to work. All right, let me just wrap this topic up real quick with a recommendation and tip for the automation. If you recall, when the automation runs, it runs from the first day of the fiscal year to the current date that it's executing. So again, in our example, it ran everything January up to December 6th. One of the things that we want you to remember is that think about running this on the last day of your fiscal year. Looking at this example, why I want you to do that is because let's assume you have an automation set up that's going to run just monthly, and it's always going to run on the first day of the month. So it will execute on December 1st, and the next scheduled run would be January 1st, 2023. My recommendation is that you should alter that January 1st occurrence to run instead on the last day of your fiscal year, because that will ensure that it will pick up all of those transactions dated December 2nd through the 31st for automatic settlement. If you don't alter it, think about what it would do. It's only going to run because January 1st is the first day of your fiscal year. It would only run from January 1st to January 1st. So you'd be missing out on that December cycle. And then I've also included a link here to the public documentation. All right, for consolidation, we have a new parameter. It's highlighted on the picture there. It's called Select Consolidated Amount From. And this is available in version 10.0.30. You may be familiar with this because it was previously a feature that was available in the feature management workspace. It was called Enable Dual Currency in General Ledger Consolidation, but now in 10.0.30, we moved it to be a parameter, so you have the choice each time that you run. So before we talk about the parameter, maybe let's look back and think about how the system used to process before the parameter or the feature even existed. So before this, the system would take the accounting currency amounts, let's say for all of the days that you were bringing forward, and it would bring forward the summarized value into the consolidations. And it summarized the accounting currency amounts from the source from the source company, excuse me. Now with this new feature, we give you the option to summarize using the reporting currency amount or the accounting currency amount. So which currency from the source company do I want to summarize and bring forward? So this would be handy, let's say, in cases where maybe your reporting currency of all the source companies that you're consolidating is the same across those source companies, and it's also the same as the accounting currency of the consolidation company. That just allows the organization to not even have to translate the amounts. It's a more efficient way to just get the amounts across rather than having to translate through the accounting currency. The option right below it is enabled. So when the first option is set to accounting currency, there's a second parameter that's used. And with this second parameter, here you can define whether the accounting currency amount from the source is translated to the consolidated company using the values from the currency translation tab settings. So I'll just point those out kind of in the middle of your screen. So use currency translation values, or whether to simply copy it over from the source company to the consolidated company. Now, additionally, the consolidation process itself has better performance because of a new feature that allows the system to better process the data. And what this feature does when you enable it is that it chunks up, I'll say, splits the task that it has to do in the consolidation process to run more efficiently. So there aren't changes through the user interface that you would notice, but behind the scenes, the system is working more efficiently because it's processing things in a parallel nature. And finally, for those of you that need to report 1099 values to the United States IRS, we have made the 2020 updates for the applicable forms. Now, over the past, I'd say 2 or 3 years, we've seen the IRS kind of slowly moving the forms to be continuous use. Excuse me. And what that means is that instead of hard coding the year on the forms, what you'll see are the forms allow the system to simply type in the year. Supposedly, if nothing changes the next year, you could reuse those forms that you've purchased across different years by doing this. In this case, in 2020, all of the forms that we use in Dynamics 365 have been converted now to use the continuous use forms. The other thing that the IRS has done is that it has made a change to the 1099 miscellaneous form. Box 13 was added, and that was the FATCA filing requirement. I believe it used to sit over in the pink shaded area in 2020 and 2021. That has now since been moved into its own box. And generally when that happens, all of the boxes subsequent following are shifted over. So for example, I think last year's state income was box 17, but now it's 18. So not major changes in the area of the 1099s, but these are the ones that you should be aware of. In terms of my recommendations, it's simple. Please please do validate your 1099 information prior to that IRS deadline. Oftentimes we will see our customers wait until the day that until the IRS deadline. For example, if something is due on January 31st, they might not even attempt to print out their 1099s until that date. It really leaves you in a bad situation if you need to alter any of the data or make any adjustments. So please do consider validating that information as soon as you can. We do have public documentation on this process as well. And also we have a frequently asked question document that I have linked later in this presentation that contains not only financial tips, but also the 1099 tips for your consideration. So before we go into Q&A, I want to recap all of the resources that are available for you. There are a lot of topics out there, and we really encourage you, especially with the awareness feature, this first one, read through all three of these documents because, again, the first one will give you a great overview. The second and the third links that I have included here will help you make that determination of when, what is the timing, what are the advantages of turning on before, what are the advantages or disadvantages of waiting to enable until after the year-end close. So that'll help you walk through and make an informed decision as to whether or not you want to enable the feature and the timing of when you enable the feature. We do have documentation as well for the ledger settlement automation to help you set that up. I had mentioned just in the previous slide, we have a year-end activities frequently asked question. It's a real popular document that we have. And know that with all of these documents, not just the frequently asked questions, but with everything here, if we receive questions from our support area, from our customers, from our partners, we do update these documents right away. So they can be changing. You might read it in January 1st. We may update it, frequently, once a week throughout January. So come back and see what's new in these documents. Again, the 1099 reporting is another good one to take a look at if you're in the United States and have that need. The financial period close workspace is linked here. We will talk in detail about the optimizations that can be made to the year-end close in next week's session, but I have linked that here. And then one thing I wanted to call out as the last linked topic here, the inventory area has a very excellent series on how, I'd say, best practices on how to close inventory in supply chain management. It is still very relevant. So if you are going to be doing an inventory closing, go ahead and take a look at this recording and associated blogs. And then just as a reminder, please plan to attend next week's session. If you can't attend, it will be recorded, of course, but the running of the year-end close will be a really great session for you to attend. So with that, I am going to open it up for any questions that the group may have, and maybe I'll just ask Kristi, are there any questions right now?
There are a lot of questions. Wow.
I thought there would be.
Yes. So
Good.
I'm going to kind of start at the top and I'll just read the questions. And Eric and I have been answering most of them as we've gone. But I just want to reread them, kind of talk about the answer just in case people have additional questions or if it triggers more ideas or more questions. So the first one is ledger settlement is done based on accounting currency, but when you also have the reporting currency, it may not match, but transactions are excluded from exchange rate revaluation. They would also be excluded from the year-end close. With the awareness feature, the opening balance and reporting currency will not be balanced. So my reply was, great question. Today we do have a gap, and we are very well aware of it, that we don't calculate a gain or a loss for the accounting and reporting currency. So right now, the assumption is that you actually would be using a foreign currency revaluation process or manually creating the gain or loss, which we know not ideal, in order to account for that difference between the debit and the credit on the reporting currency side. So we are looking, and then of course what you would do is you would include that foreign currency revaluation gain or loss or the manual gain or loss in that ledger settlement in order to balance it out in the accounting and the reporting currency. So that way it'll bring them forward with the $0 balance. We do have on our feature list a new feature to calculate gains and losses with ledger settlement. Obviously, we don't have a time frame yet, but it is on our roadmap to address this problem. Can you read next question? Can you reverse and delete the year-end close transactions after you've settled in the new year? The answer is yes or no. If you have all net new transactions in 2023, you can settle those transactions against each other. And I'm not talking opening balances, I'm talking just net new transactions. Those can be ledger settled and you can absolutely reverse the year-end close for 2022. But if you have a new transaction in 2023 that you settle against an opening balance, that's where the reversal is prevented, because obviously we don't want you to reverse it because the opening balances are deleted. And then we'd have only half of a ledger settlement remaining. So there are hard checks all in place in the product in this feature to prevent that scenario. So it'll prevent you from reversing. Next question. Customer selected all accounts to have detailed transactions. Some accounts may never be settled, but have been enabled in case it needs to be settled. Can it have any wrong impact? The biggest impact is that you're just going to have more detailed opening balance transactions, which could slow down your year-end close a little bit. I guess my comment is I'm curious why you would include them all, because you can always add new accounts to your ledger settlement at any point in time. So it may be a better practice to not include them all right away and then just include them as necessary if you want to do ledger settlement. Next question. You referred to settled transactions not being part of the opening balance. How is that reflected when you drill down to the opening balance? Is there one entry for settled entries and the detail for unsettled? Do you reference the year-end close voucher number or the original? So what happens is if you choose to maintain your detail for a balance sheet account, it will create detailed opening balances for that account in the next fiscal year. Of course, when you run your trial balance, the first page, the list page of the trial balance will always show it in summary there, right? It's only when you click on it to drill down to see the detail, that's where you will see the detailed transactions for that balance sheet account that you chose to bring forward. If you look in the documentation that Annette has listed specifically around this feature, there is a list of all of the fields that are copied over from the original transaction to the new detailed opening balance. The voucher number is not one of them. We can't reuse a voucher number or don't want to reuse a voucher number. So the voucher number for the detailed opening transactions are always the year-end close voucher number, not the original voucher number. But we do maintain things like the description. We actually do store for ledger settlement the original transaction date. So you can see that from an aging perspective, how old the transaction is. But the documentation does have a complete list for you. Okay, next question. Opening balance will be detailed for all balance accounts. Yes, again, just the ones that you choose to keep the detail in the ledger settlement window. Only those balance sheet accounts, not all of them. And yes, it'll also keep the dimensions that you choose during the year-end close.
And Kristi, I don't think I pointed that out. Maybe I should go back and just
please,
point
Annette.
out where that is. It's in General Ledger Parameters. Oh, I clicked on the wrong form there. I'm sorry. General Ledger Parameters. Again, we're going to go to that Ledger Settlements tab. And there is a column. So as Kristi mentioned, you get to choose per ledger account, whether you're keeping the detail or not. Okay.
Perfect. Now we're kind of shifting over to questions around auto ledger settlement. So
Okay.
the first question is, will the penny difference settings be taken into account? And actually, I did have a typo in here. I just realized when I typed this in incorrectly. We don't actually take into account the penny difference accounts. It has to be an exact match. My typo here is we don't look at the transaction currency. I apologize for that. I'll correct it. We look at the accounting currency. So the penny difference rounding is only used for accounting and reporting currencies, but we don't use it for the matching. So I'll get that answer updated. I apologize for that. I was thinking, I think AR and AP. Let's see here. If there's one debit for 1,000 and 2 credits for 500, will it match? And the answer is currently no. We currently only perform a 1-to-1 match, but that is something on Annette's radar. Actually, I think hopefully very soon that we will be able to do a 1-to-many match as an enhancement to the automation. And then kind of going off of that a little bit too, what if you've got multiple, there was I think a couple questions around this. What if I've got multiple $1,000 debit and multiple credits for $1,000? How does it match? Basically, first one wins, unless you give us more detailed matching criteria, such as dimension values. And actually, that kind of gets to the next question, which is, are there more criteria enhancements coming? Yes, there are. Some of you may have heard about a new feature called financial tags. That is coming in 10.032 to begin with. Financial tags are, think of it like a very simplified financial dimension. Not a lot of overhead. They're not part of your account structure or anything like that, but they're just a tag that you can use to track any type of subledger, external data that you want on your accounting entries. Like we see a lot of customers wanting to track a purchase order number or a sales order number. That's what financial tags is intended for. And financial tags, we're working on integrating that into ledger settlement, including the automation right now. So that'll be coming in some future releases. And the tag functionality will really give you much more robust matching criteria functionality. If transactions with different financial dimensions are settled, will this automatically prevent those dimensions from being brought forward to the new year via year-end close? Really good question. Basically, you want your ledger settlement dimensions to match the dimensions that you track at the year-end close. If you don't, you could get an out of balance warning if you're not tracking at the same dimension level for what to include or not include. But you always want those dimensions to match. Whatever you settle on, you also want to do your year-end close on. Next one, we kind of already talked about the matching. What if I have 1 debit and 3 credits? Again, add more criteria, and then from there, first one wins. Kind of talked about that already. And then one question was around, we're currently looking into the TrendTech solution for record to report scenarios. Would customers in the future still need ISVs like TrendTech or Blackline for monthly close tasks? Or is the idea for all of it to be covered by Dynamics? Our goal, and what Eric replied, is to really have a continuous close within Dynamics. And yes, for you to use our financial period close workspace. That is our goal. So again, we're looking at automating as much as possible at the period end to be in a continuous close state for customers. Okay, more.
Yes. Kristi, these sound like we have a lot of great entries, new entries for our FAQ documentation.
Absolutely.
This is wonderful.
Yep. More things we will add to that. Absolutely. Yep. Okay, another one kind of going back, if enabled to bring details for opening all balance sheet accounts execute in the same way, or only those ledger accounts that are selected for ledger settlement. Just like we mentioned before, only the accounts that you select to keep the detail in the ledger settlement setup page will be used for detail. Next question, how do tags differ from reasons? Great question. So yeah, and Eric just replied, tags are separate fields. You can have anywhere from 0 to 20 of those tags, and they are user defined. Think of them, they're like tags that you can enter on a lot of different like ADO, but these have a column header. So you can actually kind of group the tag values together for reporting purposes. They're just much more robust than reasons. Similar to financial dimensions, you can have a list behind the financial tag. It could be a custom list or an entity back list or just free text. Any one of the three will work. So yeah, just much more robust than reason codes that we have in the system today. Let's see here. Next. Yeah, please, yeah. Eric, if you have more to add there.
No, I was just going to say, people are asking about the links, and when the recording comes out, there'll be a PDF on the recording, and you'll be able to download that PDF and click on these links there.
Awesome.
And I think forgot the other one, so thank you.
Okay. All right.
One thing I'll point out to Eric, I'll just go to the public documentation. If people want to look at this right now, under the general ledger area, there's a whole period and close section. This is where most of the documentation that I have referenced lies. So here you can see the awareness feature and its two sub-features, the automate ledger settlements, but this is where you'll see most of the information showing up along with the frequently asked questions. Great question.
Yeah, the other thing that I just forgot was we had another question about what if there's more than one match, and like you said, it'll just match the quote unquote first one, and the first one is not really, it might be determined by like the order the records are created or something. You don't really know, so you can't really predict it.
Exactly. Yep. Thank you for clarifying that too, Eric. Let's see here. It looks like there are some more new questions. I'll publish these, and I'll also answer them as we get them over to the publish section. First one is, are there plans for any enhancements to the period close workspace? Right now, we don't have anything on our radar in the immediate future. We're really focusing on ledger settlement. So like we talked about, more enhancements to the automation, more enhancements around partial settlements and calculating gains and losses. We know that those, we're hearing from customers loud and clear, those are big gaps that we have in ledger settlement. So we're focusing there next. But again, if there's recommendations for features that you would like to see in the period close workspace, please add them here. We would love to get that feedback or add them into the ideas page so that other customers can also vote on that. We would love to get that feedback. Next question, ledger settlements can usually be done after the actual fiscal month end date. For example, my month ends on 9/30, but common practice is to close the September period on the 4th or 5th of October. In such case, can we schedule to run auto settlements, or does it have to be done manually? Do you want to take that one, Annette?
Yes, you could certainly schedule that to run through the automation process. You can schedule as frequently or as infrequently as you would like to for those occurrences. If you recall that little drop-down list, we have the daily, monthly, or weekly options there. So you certainly could schedule.
Yeah, the only date limitation, just to kind of add to that, is the fiscal year boundary.
Correct.
Yep, that is the only limitation. Otherwise, you can cross months for settlement, even if you're beyond that month.
Yes.
Yep. Next question that Eric already covered and answered, it looks like, is when will financial tags come available? As Eric mentioned, it is coming. The first release will be in 10.032. It is a little limited, I will say that. It'll include the setup and only integration into the general journal. But after that, our plans are to add it to the financial journals, all the remaining financial journals, and the big documents to start with, the sales order lifecycle, purchase order lifecycle, free text invoice. And we are working, of course, with each team to get it added into project accounting, project operations, also into the inventory side, more things on the SCM side. Basically, our goal is as quickly as possible is to have financial tags everywhere that financial dimensions are today. It'll take a few releases to get there, but that is our goal.
And then, of course, the other thing that I'll note, Kristi, is we'll follow up as well and integrate the automation of ledger settlements in with the financial tags as soon as possible.
Yes.
Because we do know that's really where the feature will shine, is when you can define even more crisp match criteria. That includes those tags.
Yep, absolutely. Another question from Mohamed. How does the rerunning of the opening balance affect the accounts marked for keep detail during the year-end close? Is it possible to rerun the opening balance? Absolutely. Yep. So this goes back to the previous question, which is you can continue to rerun your year-end close as many times as you need to. The only limitation, again, is on the reversal. So as long as no net new transactions in we'll just talk, let's say we just closed 2022. As long as no new 2023 transactions are settled against the opening balance transactions of 2023, which would have come from 2022, of course, you can rerun that year-end close or reverse it as often as you need to. But if you have settled against an opening balance for 2023, what you can do is you can go to the GL parameter, and in GL parameters, there is the option for whether you want to delete the opening balance when you rerun the year-end close or not. If you change that to no, so you don't delete, you can still rerun your year-end close for any adjustments that you've created for 2022. You can still rerun that because it doesn't delete the existing opening balances. So what you have ledger settled will remain, and that's okay. Yep, so right there, Annette has it open. If you change that delete existing year-end entries when reclosing, if you set that to no, you can rerun your year-end close as often as you need to. You can't delete your year-end close, but you can rerun it. So there's a difference there. As long as you rerun it and you're saying to not delete, that is perfectly fine. You can ledger settle everything you want to, including opening balances in 2023. I think that is the last question that I'm seeing. We still have about 8 more minutes. If there's any more questions, we're happy to answer. Still not seeing any new ones.
Okay. Well, thank you. Again, those are just wonderful questions, and they are definitely things that we can include in our frequently asked questions section of the documentation as well. So thank you for that. The other thing that I would say is if there are other topics surrounding, again, we're having the upcoming session next week, but if there are things right now that are top of mind for you that you're hoping to see in that session, just drop them in the chat. We'd be really interested in that as well. Thank you. I can't thank you enough from on behalf of our entire crew here for the interaction that we've had and for your time and attention today. We really, really do appreciate having all of this feedback. So with that, Peggy, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Annette. Wonderful job. And if the attendees could have a look in the chat, and I've posted a link to a short survey. And we'd love your feedback on today's session. And as Annette mentioned, hear what you'd like to see in future events. So that's another place that you can let us know what you might like to see in future events. And we truly appreciate your participation in the survey. As a reminder, the recording of today's session and the deck will be available on the TechTalk's Community Dynamics page within the coming weeks. So again, a big thank you to Annette and all of our Q&A moderators today and our audience for joining us. I hope everybody has a great day or evening wherever you are.